Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us back here at Nubeva. We're, of course, sitting here with Randy. We're going to break down another interesting term for you guys called quick. So before we dive into that, Randy, please tell me, how are you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Thank you very much for having me.
Of course, of course. So what is your background? Explain that to people.
The background is, I think I explained this in one of the backgrounds about Nubeva. I grew up in Spanish-speaking countries, and I hope I don't alienate some of our fans here, but I lived in Madrid, so I am a Real Madrid fan. In fact, I lived from the stadium where they actually play even today. I lived there from about for several years, and I lived 2 blocks away from the actual stadium. So I'm
right.
kind of a Real Madrid fan. There you go.
Nothing wrong with expressing your fandom, man. So represent.
I hope I don't upset the Barcelona fans. I love the way Barcelona plays.
If there's any Barcelona fans, go ahead and leave an angry comment below, and we'll apologize to you. How about that?
But I deserve it. I deserve it.
All right, all right, Randy. So tell me about Quick. So we always talk about TLS decryption and everything.
Sure.
But Quick is apparently a newer one. I mean, it hasn't been around that long. Is this somewhat of like a threat to TLS? Is it an opportunity for you guys? Like, what is it?
It's an absolute opportunity for us. So let me go to the background of what it is and why it exists, and then how it applies to us. Okay. So what it is Google, when it bought YouTube, it realized that YouTube was consuming far more network cost for Google than anything else combined. In fact, some studies say 80 to 90% of the traffic that Google was consuming at some point was YouTube traffic, and that may still be the case actually. Okay. And so what they realize is, if you look at video streaming, just like when we're doing Zoom right now, we're doing if we were doing FaceTime and other things, well, what happened 2-3 seconds ago really is not that relevant. It needs to be fast. We do still obviously want it to be secure and low latency and be able to communicate over that. And so they started working on something called Quick, here you guys see, which is a connectionless. I'm not going to go into too much networking here, but it's connectionless based. So in other words, if you split the networking world of the internet today, there's a lot of networking layers, et cetera. But the ones that matter based on our relevance is you got everything that goes on TCP, which is connection oriented. So we connect to a website, we connect to this site, we connect to that site. Everything is connection oriented and reliable. And that's the world in which TLS functions in. So when we check email, that's connection based. When we go to a website, it's connection based. Many things are. Now the other world, which is really started from video streamings and video games and connection and being able to talk over audio and voice, is a connectionless. It's UDP based. Okay, so what Google realizes, well, if you're going to do YouTube, it's video. So everybody, this has been proven for many decades now. UDP is going to do video much better, much efficiently than the connection oriented. So they decided, let's make it secure, let's make it work for YouTube, and they got a lot of gains, right? The user experience was much better. They were able to start streaming 1080p, 4K, and nowadays 4K plus. It's fantastic. Yeah. And then they realized, wait a minute, if we're going to do that, and it was already built into the browser and Chrome for YouTube, why don't we turn the entire Google franchise into that? So we're talking about Google Docs, OneDrive, everything started moving into that. And that was fantastic because at any given time, when we run any application these days, it makes me laugh how many connections there are. Each application, like if I were to do Google Docs, it'll make a connection to this, to that. It'll look for whether I have a grammatical error, whether it needs to translate a word that I don't recognize, whether it was a spelling error, et cetera, et cetera. It does a lot of things, a lot of services that we enjoy, but at the same time, that means it's connecting to a lot of different servers out there that are offering me services. And each one of the connections, even though the services are fantastic, it slows my experience way down. And that's what they realized. This is what UDP was there to solve for YouTube, right? They created Quick so that when you're watching this YouTube video and then something pops up and it says, hey, click here to like me, and this other ad pops up, et cetera, that you still have a good experience, that while you're watching this video, this other ad pops up and you can't watch the video anymore. That would be really frustrating. So that's why they created Quick. Well, what they realized is when they push Quick for other things like web servers and Google Docs and other things, that experience got much better. So today, if you're on any of the browsers now, in fact, it used to be just Chrome. Nowadays, Safari's growth based on that. Microsoft Edge is based on it. Everything is the Microsoft Windows based browsers based on it. And so when you connect with any of those browsers, by default, for the most part, you're using Quick to go to your website. Wow. Okay, and that's security. Now, so that's what it is. And the reason why it exists is kind of obvious, right? It's just everything is far more efficient. It's very, very secure. It's mimicking the handshakes of TLS from that perspective. Okay. Now, what are the issues with that? I think we talked about this right before. When you want to detect malware, you must be able to see into the data.
Yeah.
If you're standing outside of it and you're just kind of guessing, I think this is good, this is good, this is bad, this is good, you're kind of guessing, and there's a lot of great AI out there to sort that out. But the reality is, if you actually know what's going on inside, you're far more likely to catch some bad agents and things and malware and things of the nature. Okay. So the issue with Quick, like any new protocol, is all the man-in-the-middle methods don't support it. When you're doing man-in-the-middle, it's far easier to intercept a connection, stand in the middle of the connection, and then intercept it, pretend to be one or the other for each side, and then decrypt the data. But you can't really do that when there's no connection, right? If the UDP is just flying through and it's not connected, you can't really do that. So what happens today on most deep packet inspection systems is that do man-in-the-middle is one of two things. One is if Quick is going through, they can't see it. The second way they do it is when Quick is going through and they can control the client, they'll downgrade that. They'll say, no, you can't be running Quick. You got to run TCP. Okay, HTTPS. And obviously, all the benefits that I just mentioned, why Quick will actually exist, why the entire Google franchise, most of Microsoft is now going to use Quick, that benefit is gone for both the vendor and the server end, and most especially the client experience. So what that means is if we're all, if COVID wasn't around and we're sitting in the office and several hundred of us are behind this firewall that's protecting us, and we all start Office 365 or something to that effect, well, what we know in the last few years is all the firewalls are all getting bogged down. They're getting slower and slower and slower. They start, we hear people blaming the Wi-Fi, blaming this, blaming that. IT doesn't know what they're doing. When in fact, all it's happening is every application is connecting more and more and more and more to services. And the firewalls that was there to protect it is actually can't be protecting them much. A lot of firewalls used to only do 100,000 connections. Not long ago, 100,000 connections used to seem, wow, you're never going to consume 100,000 connections.
Yeah.
Now on a regular basis, just by myself with my phone and my laptop, I could be in the hundreds, in the 500s per person.
Wow.
And so 100,000, what seemed to be a lot, is really not much anymore. Okay. And so all those benefits that I mentioned, if you're doing deep packet inspection with man-in-the-middle, all that goes away, either goes away, or that inspection is not being done in the quick data itself.
So from that point, then, how do you let Quick function the way it's supposed to and still be able to decrypt the data?
Absolutely. So just like we described last time, how we get the keys, the session keys from TLS 1.2, 1.3, we do exactly that for Quick. That actually doesn't change at all from our perspective what we do. It's just a new TLS protocol that is using UDP. That's really what's happening for us. We still get the session keys. Nothing happens in the connection, just like I described before. We are the only solution out there that can decrypt the data without touching and modifying the data itself. Right? We can actually take it in, whether you're using TLS 1.3 or now with Quick, everything goes through as it was meant to do. We get the keys, and one can decrypt at the time or after the fact. It doesn't really matter. And so all the benefits that you get from Quick remain the same. The difference is we can decrypt them.
Would you say from this point, Quick is going to be continuously adopted more and more? I mean, it seems the way you're describing it, aside from the industry just kind of catching up and being able to work with it, it seems to have like it's almost entirely a benefit versus what is currently out there.
Absolutely. I mean, things that do encryption take a long time to be adopted and mature, and that's for great reason, right? We want it to be secure, we want it to be reliable. So this has been around for 8 or 9 years now. Quick has been around for 8 or 9 years. Most of the data today from Google, from that perspective, unless you're going through a firewall man in the middle, everything is going through Quick. What you're going to start seeing is obviously when Microsoft moved to Microsoft Edge, which is based on Chromium, just like Chrome is based on Chromium, Microsoft default browser is based on that. And so that's when they moved everything to Quick. So what you're going to start seeing, whether it's already out there or in production or you're using it or not, Office 365 is all going to move to Quick. And all the services, if you have a world where you just think through it, right? Apple already has Quick. Google uses it. Microsoft uses it. You kind of just common sense, you kind of know, well, everything else has got to go that way. So
that's a good point. So
because everybody benefits.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like you guys are in a good position. As you said, you guys are able to
Absolutely.
do this. So as the industry grows, you guys will be right there able to support it. Did that take any work on your guys' side at all? Or was it just like, okay, we just need to adjust a couple small things or so on?
It was actually amazingly easy for us. In fact, the part of getting the keys, which is, when you look at it from a higher level, appears to be the hardest thing to do. That was quite trivial for us. This was no different than getting the keys for any application out there. It's actually quite trivial for us to do. Okay. Now, decrypting the data was actually harder for us because nobody else up to now, if you look at TLS,
Mhm.
up to TLS 1.2, there were a lot of different methods out there that could get the keys and decrypt the data.
Yeah.
And so there's been a lot of analysis and research on how to build a decryptor for TLS 1.2. So what we had to do is, well, nobody could get the keys for TLS 1.3. We were the only ones. And hence we built a decryptor for TLS 1.3. But that's not hard because that's kind of an evolution from TLS 1.2. So you
Okay.
had some framework and understanding and research ideas out there to build something. Quick is different. Nobody can get the keys, so surely nobody can decrypt it. There was no point for any party out there or research to discuss how are we gonna decrypt after the fact, because nobody could get that keys.
Mhm.
So we were the first ones to get the keys. After getting the keys, well, the hard part came from, well, how are you going to take the keys and decrypt the data? And so that was actually quite difficult because in Quick, it's actually connectionless, but it reaches a lot of different parties to be able to connect and get the services itself. And so that was the hard part for us. It's actually the decryptor part.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess it makes
Yeah,
sense though if the framework there wasn't ever laid for Quick, but it's interesting that you were still able to pull from your guys' knowledge from TLS
right.
1.2 to get it done. It's pretty interesting. So I guess if
Okay.
anybody's running Quick and wants to be able to decrypt their data, you guys should probably hit up Nubeva. So
Absolutely. We
Randy,
certainly hope so.
thank you for the understanding of this. This was a really high level one for me going into it. And if anybody else has any questions, don't be afraid to ask them because we'll be very happy to run through them for you as well. But for now, Randy, thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.